Last Father's Day started out like any other. I was up early waiting for my wife and teenage daughters to join me, as we do every year on Mother's Day. I'd spoil my wife with mimosas for breakfast, a fancy cheese platter for lunch, and her favorite steak dinner in the evening. As the girls got older, I took care of everything myself on Father's Day. It was my wife's job to prepare a special breakfast, but last year was different. I waited for her to wake up feeling hungry. By the time she finally did, she greeted me with a kiss before getting to work on a family breakfast. Later, we went out to lunch at a quirky cafe that served sandwiches with Doctor Who themes. My wife is always on top of things when it comes to organizing our family schedule. Every event, from holidays to birthdays, is marked on the calendar. I usually miss the details, but she noticed that my birthday was going to fall on Father's Day that year. I wasn't surprised. She teased me about getting double the gifts, promising something special. I kissed her. I gave her a kiss on the cheek, hoping for a bit more than usual. She often teased me with playful hints during foreplay, but on my birthday and Father's Day, the favors were more than just flirtation. They were given without strings attached. I wasn't clueless. I was genuinely excited, thinking maybe this year I'd get an extra treat for my birthday. But as the days went by, something shifted. My wife, who was usually so steady, began to act differently. She started working late, dressing up more for her job at the bakery, and even she was wearing more makeup than usual. I started to feel uneasy when she went out alone on Friday, which wasn't like us. We were always close and preferred each other's company over anyone else. Our marriage felt solid, and we weren't big on socializing. A night at home was what we enjoyed most, so I was surprised to see her dressed up that Friday. She was wearing a new skirt, tan stockings, heels, and her hair was done up like she just stepped out of a salon. I thought we had plans, so I whistled, expecting a night together. But she said she was going out with her coworkers. I was surprised that she hadn't mentioned it before. She seemed a bit flustered and apologized, saying she'd been asked last minute. I eyed her, wondering how she'd managed to put herself together so fast. My frustration grew as I started to suspect she wasn't being honest with me. Still, the idea of her cheating seemed impossible. She was the picture of a suburban wife and mother, plus our intimate life was as good as ever, which only added to my confusion. She brushed off my suspicions, saying she'd worked a half day and just wanted to look nice. I didn't have words as she rushed out the door, leaving me standing there speechless. She didn't get home until nearly midnight. Her hair was hastily tied up, and the idea that she'd been with her I couldn't think about work. She ignored me, heading straight for the shower. Something was definitely wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Everything seemed perfect on the surface, but deep down I sensed trouble brewing, especially given my job in retail, where I knew how to read situations. Saturday came and I headed out early for work. Oddly, my wife didn't wake up to say goodbye, which she usually did when I got to the Alice. The morning barista with her fiery red hair and sharp blue eyes was waiting by the entrance. I'd always found redheads intriguing, even though I was content in my marriage. "Hey Derek," she called out as I approached. The doors were still locked. It was about half an hour before opening. Alice had told me before that she didn't feel comfortable working with the night crew. "You okay, Derek? You look down today," she observed. "Just got a lot on my mind." I admitted. She gave me a curious look but didn't press. "Hang tight. I'll get you some of our best coffee," she offered. I forced a smile and nodded. "Sounds good. I'll be in shortly." I secured the doors and made my usual rounds on the sales floor, checking in with the department managers, even though I didn't need to. My team ran a tight ship. I liked chatting. I thought it made a difference, and I think they appreciated it. My last stop was the cafe where Alice had my large black coffee waiting for me. "Here you go, Megamark Finest Brew," she said, handing it over. "Thanks, Alice," I replied, pushing 2 bucks across the counter. "Keep your money, boss," she insisted. "I can't take chances, Alice. I cover my own expenses. The last thing I need is someone making a fuss about a $2 coffee." Derek, I know you'd never do that, but you'd be surprised what people complain about. It's not worth the hassle, boss. I get it. Some of the employees probably got free coffee every now and then, but it wasn't worth monitoring. My job comes with enough stress dealing with complaints about things like parking or HR issues that would take too much time to chase down a free coffee. The day passed quietly. The most exciting thing that happened was an elderly woman trying to steal bird and cat food, which gave me something else to think about when I got back that evening. My wife and daughters were heading out to a concert with friends. It was something they planned, but I had forgotten. I'd been so preoccupied that I'd forgotten to talk to Lily later to sort out the tension between us. I was still unsure what had happened the night before, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off that night. I decided to check her email, but there was nothing there. She hadn't received any significant messages, at least none that revealed what I feared. I couldn't check her texts or call log, and searching her clothes for clues weren't any more fruitful. She had already done her Saturday laundry. Frustrated, I gave up and went to bed after watching a movie. Still feeling unsettled when my birthday and Father's Day came around, I started the day the usual way: toast, coffee, and sitting out on the porch enjoying the calm early morning. The birds were chirping, and I couldn't help but wonder what the day had in store for me. Around 9, it was 10 a.m. 1500 hours. I went back inside to refill my coffee and noticed my wife and daughters were up and about, busy packing lunch. I asked what was going on. Taylor, my oldest, casually mentioned they were heading to the beach. I was surprised, especially since I realized they hadn't forgotten my birthday this time, unlike how I often had to remind them of important dates. I was puzzled at Lily, my wife, who didn't seem to have anything special planned. It seemed like they didn't have anything special planned. My phone rang. I hoped it was them calling to say they changed their minds, but it was my mom instead. "Hey Derek, happy birthday and happy Father's Day," she said cheerfully. "Thanks, Mom," I replied. "It looks like Lily has some big plans for you guys today." "Nope, she just took the girls to the beach," I told her. "Really? That's not like her." "I figured she'd whip up something special for breakfast and make the day all about you," she said. "It's a special breakfast, and the day is all about you," I replied. "Yeah, I'm not sure what's been going on lately. She's been acting strange for a while now," I admitted. "Well, don't worry about it too much, sweetheart. She probably has something special planned for later." I said goodbye and hung up the phone. Her eternal optimism and close bond with Lily always it was a nice surprise, especially after my dad passed away a few years back. I was thinking about my marriage when my phone rang again. It was my assistant. "Hey Derek, there was an incident at the coffee shop this morning. Alice was involved. A customer shoved her on the stairs and she lost her balance. It looks like she might have a broken arm. They took her to St. Alex's for x-rays. Derek, I hope you don't mind me calling. I just wanted to check in about tomorrow. Is everything under control? I'm sorry for bothering you on Father's Day. Thanks for letting me know." I felt bad for Alice, but I figured they wouldn't be back in time to cover the shift with no one home. I went to IHOP for breakfast. The place was packed with families celebrating Father's Day, and I started to feel overwhelmed like I didn't belong there. I left before I could have got too emotional and ended up at McDonald's instead, sitting in the park with my coffee and orange juice. I thought back to the boating trips I used to take with my daughters when they were younger. Now that they were getting ready for college, they seemed more distant, spending more time with their mother. Maybe it was for the best. I told myself the day was slipping away and I doubted there would be any special dinner planned. I grabbed a Reuben at the Doctor Who-themed cafe where a Facebook post from my mother-in-law had caught my attention. My wife had been posting photos from their beach trip, which meant my mother-in-law had seen them and commented. I went to a sports bar but couldn't shake the sadness, so I left and went to a cigar lounge instead. I treated myself to an Opus X and settled in to watch the game. I was invited to join a couple of older guys for a game of cards. I introduced myself as Derek and they said they were Lenny and his brother. They welcomed me into their game of 5-card draw. Lenny said, "Grab yourself a drink. and pointed to a cooler. On the floor, I thanked him and grabbed a Miller Lite. I didn't have any kids with me today. Did my ex take them off with her new guy, Noah? I joked, but I was actually frowning. My wife and daughters are at the beach, and it seems like they've forgotten what day it is. It's a tough break. Lenny chimed in. I hardly see my boys. I've got 2 in the service now, my daughter's in California and my grandson Charlie just turned 1. I'm heading out there next week. That sounds great, I replied as my girls hit 17 and 18. I found myself missing when they were little and they nodded, understanding the sentiment. The conversation eventually came back to my wife. Do you think she really forgot your birthday or is she just avoiding you? Noah asked, voicing the same question that had been on my mind. I recounted the strange things that had been happening lately, especially on Friday nights. They both shook their heads. She's cheating on you, Lenny said bluntly, and no one nodded in agreement. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down it made sense. I don't know. I just can't believe it, I muttered, struggling to process what they were telling me. Listen, Derek, Lenny began sharing his own story. I've been where you are. The late nights out, dressing up all fancy, the disrespect, it all adds up. I reacted too fast and went straight for divorce when I found. When my wife was unfaithful, I regretted it. Not just the financial hit, but also the emotional toll. It just wasn't worth it. Trust me, if you really love her, think about forgiveness. We don't get many second chances at love. I thanked Elle for his advice, even though I thought he was crazy. The idea of forgiving her seemed impossible. I shook their hands, said goodbye, and left the lounge. Later, as I scrolled through Facebook on the couch, I saw more photos of my wife and daughters smiling and having fun at the beach. It crushed me. I realized it was time to face reality. My wife had forgotten my birthday on Father's Day, but more importantly, I was sure now that she cheated. The signs were all there, and I couldn't ignore them anymore. I was determined to move forward. I got ready for the night, deciding to treat myself to dinner at my favorite restaurant, even if it meant a long wait. I didn't care. I headed out for dinner, craving a good steak. I was sitting at the bar while waiting for my table when an older man took the seat next to me. He had the champagne bottle. The man sitting in front of me had a slight frown on his face, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he ordered a tequila. As the bartender topped off my glass, the man couldn't resist asking, "Are you celebrating alone, or did someone else bail on you?" "Just me," I replied with a small smile. He nodded and took a sip of his drink. "I'm waiting for my family," he said. 3 generations strong, though my daughter broke her arm earlier today. He added this last part with a chuckle, clearly amused by the idea of grown kids still managing to get hurt. I nodded, appreciating the humor. It looks like I'll be cooking solo for a while. My wife needs to take care of Alice and Lisa, so she'll be leaving me to my own devices for a bit. Before I could say more, a little girl came running across the crowded bar, yelling, "Grandpa," and showering the man with hugs and kisses. A moment later, I heard my name. Alice and her mom were walking toward me. The resemblance between them was uncanny. "Hey Alice, how's your arm?" I asked, concerned. "Not too bad, thanks. The painkillers are working, but when it happened, it was pretty," she replied, rough. Alice introduced me to her parents, Carl and Matilda, and their daughter, Lisa. "Where's your wife?" Matilda asked. "I'm not sure," I said. "She took the girls to the beach this morning and I haven't heard from them all day. It's Father's Day and your birthday too." "That's terrible," Matilda said. "What's going on with her?" I didn't want to get into it, so I just shrugged it off and said forget about her. Matilda insisted, "You're joining us?" Carl, clearly sensing where this conversation was headed, gave me a knowing smile. "You don't want them ganging up on you, Derek," he said with a chuckle. He seemed to know how these situations usually play out. "Thanks, but it's your day." "I don't want to intrude," I protested. "Nonsense," Carl replied. "This is our day. Derek's grandpa's day." Their table's buzzer went off. Carl tossed a $2 bill on the counter before leaving. "See you at our table," he said. "Sorry about that, Derek. My parents can be pretty stubborn," Alice apologized. "Don't worry about it. Eating alone would be worse." Lisa was laughing at the stories about her mom when we were all having dinner. My phone rang, but I ignored it, leaving it on the table. Matilda, my wife, asked me, "Yeah, I know. It's complicated. Maybe you can find a way to forgive her." I told her I didn't know yet. She suggested glancing at Carl. I waved for the check, grateful for their company, and treated them to dinner as I signed the receipt. I thought about the advice I'd been hearing all day. Despite not having solid proof of my wife's infidelity, I couldn't shake the feeling that was seriously wrong. I ignored the phone as it continued to ring. When I got home, my daughters greeted me with hugs and apologies for forgetting Father's Day. I told them it's okay. I don't expect them to remember everything. Taylor's face changed. "Wait a minute. Turns out it was her birthday today." She ran inside yelling for her mom and daddy. "We didn't know. We're so sorry." "You must hate us," Taylor cried. "No, sweetheart. I love you girls more than anything. You didn't know." "It's fine," I assured her, hiding my anger towards Lily. This wasn't my daughter's fault. I went upstairs to change, leaving the commotion behind. When I came back, I found Lily crying by herself. She said sorry, but I shook my head and stepped out onto the deck with a beer and a cigar. The peaceful evening felt like a mockery. Lily came outside a few moments later. "Derek," she started, but I cut her off. My anger was boiling over. It had been a mistake, and now nearly 20 years later it was all coming to a bitter end. The worst part was wondering how long she'd been unfaithful. Was this her first time? Did I even know this guy? Were my daughters really mine? It's surprising how dark your thoughts can turn when someone betrays you. I decided right then that I would request a paternity test for the girls, not just for peace of mind but to embarrass Lily in the process. That night I stayed up late researching divorce laws online before finally falling asleep on the couch alone on my birthday at 5. It was 10 p.m. I woke up and saw that Lily was asleep in her bed, curled up around her pillow, looking peaceful. I had to admit that she was still beautiful, but she wasn't mine anymore. After a quick shower, I left the house without waking her. I saw Taylor waiting for me. "How bad is it, Dad?" she asked. "As bad as it gets," I replied. "Can you forgive her?" she asked. "I'll try," I said. "It was just one day, one mistake. It's more than just forgetting my birthday and Father's Day," she said. "She cheated on you," I said quietly. "No, Dad. She wouldn't do that. There has to be a reason. Maybe something pushed her to it, but I know she wouldn't." Taylor insisted. "Think about it. Taylor, she's been acting strange for weeks. On Friday night, she got all dressed up and went out looking amazing, but not for me. That wasn't for me. Your sister went to the beach without me. That's always been a family thing." Taylor looked down. "What if it's not an affair? What if it was just a one-time thing? Can't you forgive her?" "I doubt it was just one mistake. Taylor, and anyway, has she shown me any love this weekend? She left me behind when she went out with someone else. That's not love, that's selfishness," I explained, and tears welled up in her eyes as she hugged me tightly. "Please don't divorce her," she begged. "I have to head to work, sweetheart. We'll talk more later." I watched her retreat into her sister's room for the rest of the day. It felt like a blur. Alice came in, and I helped her with some paperwork related to her accident. She was struggling to fill out the forms with her left hand, so I guided her through it. "How are things at home?" Alice asked, looking concerned. "Not good," I admitted. She didn't even deny it when I confronted her. "Damn, Derek, I'm so sorry," Alice said. Alice nodded understandingly. "I get it," she murmured. "My ex cheated on me when I was pregnant, and I kicked him out before the baby was born. My mom wasn't happy about it, and called me disposable. That's rough. It surprised me when your mom suggested I forgive my wife last night. Yeah, I noticed that too. It makes me wonder if something happened between my parents when I was younger. If they're happy deceiving each other, that's their problem. I don't trust liars. When I got home, Lily wasn't there. I figured she was with him. I was furious. I drove to her grocery store, where I found her car parked in the back lot. I didn't even get out when I saw her with a young guy, probably in his early 20s. She noticed me and yelled something, but I drove off. If she was cheating, he could have her. I packed my bags that night and moved into I stayed at a hotel. Wendy and Taylor asked me to stay, but I couldn't. My mum's been cheating on me. I told them I saw her with a man today. There must be a mistake, Dad. Wendy insisted there's no mistake. I saw it with my own eyes. I replied, please don't break up our family. She sobbed. Your mum did that, honey, not me. I love you both and I'll be in touch every day. I reassured them, leaving them in tears as I drove away. Lily nearly hit me as she sped out of the driveway, but the following week was pretty rough. Lily was calling and texting all the time, begging for another chance. Her family tried to get me to talk to her, but I ignored them. I wasn't going to play their games. Even my daughters tried to convince me to forgive her, but I couldn't. Eventually, I met with a lawyer. I was willing to split the house equally, even though I could have claimed more since I paid for most of it. Surprisingly, I didn't have to pay alimony. Lily could support herself. The only downside was not having I had concrete proof of the affair, which could weaken my case, but I was ready to take my chances. Lily tried to rally her family against me, insisting she'd only cheated once on that Friday before my birthday. It was surreal. Even my daughters started to turn on me. I told them a DNA test was court-ordered, which shut things down fast. Then a letter from Lily arrived admitting to a fling with a 20-year-old, which was all the proof I needed. Finally, the divorce proceedings went my way despite her resistance. The judge approved I proposed some terms and the divorce was set to finalize in 60 days. After that, I was isolated. Even my mum stopped talking to me, siding with Lily. It hurt, but I stood my ground. I called my daughters every day, leaving messages. Even when they didn't respond, I wasn't going to let them forget about me. One bright spot was my Sunday coffee with Alice and Lisa. We'd meet at a nearby coffee shop. While Lisa watched cartoons, I'd talk to Alice about everything I was going through. Your daughters will come around, Derek. Alice reassured me. I hope they're telling them the truth. I just miss them so much, I said, feeling the weight of it all. The following week, I went back to the same coffee shop at my usual times, sat down with a book. I heard a familiar voice. Hey stranger, said Alice with a smile. I looked up and waved her over. Are you stalking me or is this just part of your Sunday routine? She teased as she sat down. No, I live nearby. I like to come here for coffee and some reading on Sunday mornings. It gets a bit lonely at home. I told her we talked about the neighborhood, caught up on small things and then went our separate ways. It wasn't planned, but meeting for coffee every Sunday became a habit, and I found that I enjoyed her company. Lisa was a joy to be around too on the day the divorce was finalized. I knocked on the door of what used to be my house. Lily answered. Her eyes were red from crying. She didn't say a word, but motioned for me to come in. Are the girls home? I asked. They're at a school play, she said. I knew you'd come tonight, she added softly. So you waited until it was too late to stop it, didn't you? I said, with a hint of sarcasm. Yes, she replied, her voice trembling. I knew if I begged you might listen, but I couldn't let that happen. You broke my heart, Lily. There's no forgiveness for that. Derek, it was just one mistake. Why can't you forgive me? She pleaded. I looked her in the eye. Did you love me when you were with him? Did you love me when you ignored me on my birthday? If that's what love looks like to you, then we were never on the same page. I never thought we would be. She sobbed. I never wanted this to happen. I never wanted a cheating wife. But here we are. I shot back. She tried to speak again, but I cut her off. You didn't just break my heart. You turned my own mother and daughters against me. I'll never forgive you for that. You're overreacting, she countered. If you don't make things right with our family, I'll make sure every man you date knows what you did. I don't need anyone else. Wrong answer, I said, getting up. I'll find other ways to make you regret it. As I turned to leave, she grabbed my arm. It's not my fault, she cried desperately. Did I cheat on you? I pulled my arm free. You've set an example for our daughters, showing them it's okay to cheat and call it a mistake. Well, I'm not going down because of some guy who made you feel attractive. Rot in hell, Derek, she said as I walked out the door, not affected by her tears. A few weeks later, Alice knocked on my office door and came in. Sure, come on in, I said, curious about the look on her face. Derek, does the company have any rules about dating coworkers? Do you have any policies about workers dating? She asked. I was taken aback. I'd been thinking of asking her out myself, but it seemed I was too late. We do have strict policies about harassment or favoritism, I explained. They're in place to protect everyone involved. She smiled and left her address and phone number on my desk. Let's have dinner tomorrow night, she said. Lisa will be joining us. I replied later that day. Sounds perfect. I left a voicemail for my daughter. Hey, it's Dad. Hope you and your sister are doing well. Nothing much here except a coworker asked me out. Love you both. Call me soon. I knew that might stir things up with Lily, but I didn't care. It was time for me to move on. I was grateful Alice had made the first move. Not only was she beautiful, but she was kind and her daughter was a delight. Things were finally starting to look up. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from Lily. You're such a fool. I laughed at her reaction. I wasn't going to dwell on the end of my marriage to a cheating wife at 41. I still felt young enough to find love again, maybe even have more kids. Alice was. I figured her 30s might want that too. It was still early days, but I knew it might be a priority for her as a single mom. As for me, I hadn't been with anyone in months. The next evening, I showered, shaved, and dressed casually for my dinner with Alice. I checked myself in the mirror. I was still in good shape, no extra weight, and my brown hair hadn't gone gray yet. I had a job that paid the bills, so I figured I was a decent catch for someone like Alice. When I arrived at her house with flowers, wine, and a stuffed bear for Lisa, I was nervous. Alice opened the door, and I was taken aback. Her red hair fell in soft curls around her shoulders and her SU dress showed off her legs. Barefoot, her hot pink toenails matched her fingernails. Had I passed the test? I blurted out. Teased God, yes. I was laughing at my own words. She chuckled and accepted the gifts, then ushered me in. Lisa was glued to the TV, but her face lit up when I handed her the stuffed bear. I knelt beside her and smiled. This is for you. Her eyes sparkled with delight as she grabbed the bear and rushed off to show Alice. Watching Lisa, I couldn't help but think of Taylor and Wendy at her age. It made me miss them more than ever. Alice noticed my expression. What's wrong? I forced a smile, thinking about my girls when they were this little. Is it really that bad? She asked. They still won't talk to me, I admitted. They've turned them against me. I leave messages every day and I won't stop trying, but I can't change their minds. I'm sorry, Derek. That's got to be tough, she said. I said sympathetically, but I'm sure they listen to your messages. I hope so. I mentioned our dinner tonight, and Lily texted me, calling me a fool for moving on so quickly. I said, shaking my head. Alice bit her lip. Am I moving too fast? She asked, looking slightly embarrassed. Maybe, I admitted, but I'm happy to find out. She smiled and took my hand. Dinner's ready. I hope you like pasta with meat sauce. Sounds great, I said, feeling more relaxed. Oh, and I have garlic bread too, so get ready for us to make out on the couch later. She teased me, making me laugh after dinner as we settled in with wine. Being a mom is the best part of my day, Alice said softly. But moments like these are special too. I wrapped an arm around her, and she nestled closer. It's even busier with two, I replied. Kids, I said, thinking of my daughters. Do you think they'll come around? I hope so, I replied, feeling the weight of the situation. I know you want to be a gentleman, but you don't have to be. I need something real, and my daughter needs a father figure. That's what I'm offering. Wow, I said, impressed by her honesty. Alice smiled and took my hand. So what do you say? I hesitated, then nodded. I'm a family man, always have been. I'm not interested in dating. If my wife hadn't cheated, I'd still be married, but I like. She grinned and kissed me softly. I liked it. I liked her too. That night, we didn't rush into anything. We both wanted to take it slow and respect each other's feelings. Soon after, fate handed me a strange gift. The guy who had contributed to the end of my marriage applied for a night manager job at my store. I recognized him instantly on a second shift. I left a 40 in his car, one that matched the stock we had just unloaded the next morning. I casually walked him to his car when we saw the TV. I was surprised. Did you buy that TV? I asked. Ping. Dumb. No, Derek. It's not mine. I don't know how it got there. I suggested that we go back to the store and cover the security cameras, since there was no night crew there. He was really panicking, insisting that he was innocent. I called the police, and he got off with a misdemeanor and community service, but he lost his job, and that was enough for me. A few weeks later, on a quiet Saturday morning, I parked next to Alice's car. She was waiting for me, and as I walked up, she greeted me with a kiss. Dinner tonight is still on? I asked. Absolutely. I'm making something special, she replied, smiling before I could respond. I heard a familiar voice behind me. We need to talk about the girls in college, it said. It was Lily, looking irritated. I shot her an annoyed glance as I turned around. They can go wherever they want. I've handled the finances, I said coolly, but thanks to you, they won't talk to me. Lily claimed the girls were worried I wouldn't cover their tuition, I said, frustration building. Alice couldn't help but laugh. She said, Lost them in the divorce, huh? She got a sharp glare from Lily. Lily shot back. You've ruined everything. One mistake and you've cost me my marriage, my family, my daughters, and even my mother. Don't even think about dating anyone else. I'll make sure you never have a second date. Alice's reply was quick and cutting. No one's lining up to date a cheating woman unless they're after something easy. I started to walk away towards the store, but the shouting behind me made me turn around. Alice had stepped right up to Lily, pinning her against the car. Stay away from my man, Alice snapped, jabbing a finger at her. I rushed back, pulling Alice away. Stop it, I said, trying to defuse the situation. You heard me, Lily spat, storming off. Please, Lily, I called after her. Just go. It's over and that's on you, I called after her, watching her leave in tears. I caught up to Alice, taking her hand. I'm sorry, Derek. I got way too territorial, she admitted. Parking lot fights are great for the ego, I joked, and we both laughed as we headed inside. Later that day, I got a call from my mom, but the call dropped unexpectedly. I was concerned. I went over to her house, ignoring Alice's calls. When I got there, the ambulance had already left. I found out at the hospital that she'd passed away before even reaching the ER, sitting alone in the lobby. I thought about her final words, the ones I'd never get to hear again. My phone rang. It was Alice. Hey, she said. My mom just passed away, I said, barely audible. I'm sorry, Derek. I'm here for you. I don't want to be alone right now. Can you come over? I'll be there as soon as I can. Thank you. I don't want to face this alone. Instead of going home, I drove to my old house. I needed to speak to my daughters. I found myself standing between them. Their cars were parked in the driveway, and I felt a wave of apprehension wash over me. At least Lily's car wasn't there. I wasn't ready for that confrontation. I walked upstairs and found Taylor in her room. Daddy! She exclaimed. Her joy was short-lived, though, as Wendy appeared behind her. Did you come here to beg? Wendy snapped. You can leave, Grandma had said. I had a heart attack this morning and passed away. I said, my voice breaking. The tension was palpable. They both gasped, stunned into silence. I just thought you needed to hear it from me, I added quietly. With that, I turned and left, ignoring Wendy's call for me to wait. I couldn't face more conflict. I drove to the lake where we used to spend family days, hoping for some peace. The breeze and still waters provided a small measure of comfort, but I soon felt the tears welling up again, not just for my mum but for the rift between me and my daughters. What had I done to make them resent me so much? Lily had shattered our family, but they couldn't see that. Lost in thought, I didn't hear them approach until it was too late. I turned. I saw Lily and the girls standing nearby. How did you find me? I asked, turning back to the lake. You forgot to turn off your location sharing on your phone. Lily replied quietly. Derek, I'm sorry about your mom. Yeah, I muttered. Do you regret her passing or turning her against me? Lily fell silent. Just leave me alone. I can't handle this, I said. My emotions are overwhelming me. I'll never forgive you. Lily's voice wavered. The last time we spoke, she said she wouldn't talk to me until I'd begged you to stop the divorce. She didn't even say she loved me before hanging up. The girls rushed over and hugged me tightly, and we cried together. It's not your fault, they said. I told them it wasn't their mother's fault. She broke us apart. We're sorry, Taylor whispered. We just wanted you to forgive her. She loves you. She's not faithful enough, I replied. I'm sorry. I love you both. I need you. You're heading to college soon, and I'll miss you. Let's not waste any more time. We won't shut you out anymore, Dad, Wendy promised. I just wish Grandma had the chance to hear that, Taylor added, her voice full of regret. Come with me, girls, I said. You haven't seen my new place yet. Let's grab some pizza on the way. When we pulled into my driveway, I saw Alice's car. I'd completely forgotten she was coming. It looks like you'll meet Alice, I told the girls. Is she your girlfriend? They asked in unison, making me laugh. I said, well, we just started dating. I felt a bit embarrassed. Look at him blushing. Wendy is so cute, they teased, jumping out of the car and rushing over to Alice. They bombarded her with questions. Girls, give her a break. Help. I'll introduce you properly when she's inside, I called after them, shaking my head as I approached. Alice smiled warmly, opening her arms for a hug. Your daughters, she said, grinning. I nodded and said, come on, let's do this right. I introduced Alice to the girls, and after a few cheeky comments from Wendy and Taylor, we all started laughing. Let's do a quick tour of the house, I suggested. I told them I needed to make arrangements for my mom's funeral. I'll order pizza while you show them around, Alice offered, smiling as if she could read my mind. After dinner, we sat around sharing stories about my mom. My daughters even shared a few embarrassing stories about me, which Alice found very amusing. The hours flew by and before we knew it, it was past 10. It's getting late. Hey girls, it's getting late, I said. I don't have beds for the guest rooms yet. Can we stay tonight? Taylor asked hopefully. I said, I'll pick you up tomorrow and we'll have breakfast together, I suggested. Can we help sort through Grandma's things too? Taylor offered. Thank you, honey, I said. I'm touched by your offer. Alice, would you like to join us or do you need to go home to Lisa? She's with my parents, Alice said. Taylor perked up. Who's Lisa? She's my 4-year-old Alice, my older daughter, explained, and the girl's eyes lit up. Oh, we have to meet her soon, Wendy said excitedly. I promise. I'll make arrangements, Alice replied. Someday soon, she added, with a wink. Back at the house, Alice and I snuggled up on the couch. They're great girls, she said, resting her head on my shoulder. I'm glad you're reconnecting with them, I replied. I am too, I added with a sigh. I wish it hadn't taken my mum's passing to bring us back together with Alice in my arms. I fell asleep feeling a sense of peace for the first time in a long while. The next morning, I woke up with Alice still nestled against me under a blanket. I kissed her forehead gently, apologizing for falling asleep. She stirred and stretched. It's okay, you've been through a lot. Would you like to join us for breakfast today? I asked. Only if I can bring Lisa? She said with a smile. My parents have plans this morning. Of course, my daughters would love to meet her later. I met my daughters at IHOP. Lisa and I, as soon as we walked in, my girls rushed over, greeting Lisa. With hugs and twirling her around, Lisa giggled in delight. We'll take her to the bathroom, the girls announced in unison, whisking Lisa away. I turned to Alice, grinning. Think they'll get along? I asked, playfully nudging her. I hope they stay friends for years to come, she replied. It was just the start, but Alice's commitment to something long-term. I had a quick chat with my daughters over breakfast, and they reassured me that Lisa and they would get along. They chatted about everything from cartoon tunes to their favorite movies. Alice fit in perfectly, and for once there was no hostility or awkwardness from my daughters. I wasn't sure why, but it felt like a fresh start for all of us. Later that day, after a busy day of phone calls, cleaning out my mum's house and making funeral arrangements, I finally had a chance to relax. The girls had returned for dinner while Alice and Lisa had gone their separate ways after breakfast. Alice had suggested that it might be easier for Lisa not to be around while I was out of the blue. Wendy looked up at me and asked, Dad, are you in love with Alice? I was caught off guard, but I answered, We've only seen each other a few times outside of work. It's too early to say if it's love. Taylor, ever the skeptic, smirked. Okay, Dad, but you know those cartoons where girls get all. Alice looks at you with dreamy eyes and hearts start floating. That's her when she looks at you. Before I could object, the girls exchanged knowing looks and declared, We like her. My heart swelled with joy for a moment, but then anger quickly followed, setting my pizza down. I headed for the sink to cool off. Wendy's voice softened as she followed me. How could you have ignored me for so long and now you're okay with this? Do you know how many times I cried after leaving you messages, thinking you didn't care? You think I didn't care? I asked, turning to face her. I left you messages too. I thought you didn't want to hear them. Taylor stepped in. With Mom, she said that if you felt distant, you could come back to her, and we'd be a family again. We're really sorry. I looked over at Wendy, and her eyes were filled with tears. She rushed over to hug me. Dad, we're so sorry. When that didn't work, she told us you'd abandoned us and wouldn't pay for college because you. Wendy added that she made it sound like your messages during the divorce were just tactics to win in court. You believed her? I asked, sinking in my chair, if you could forgive your boyfriend for cheating when you'd heard her defend one mistake against 20 years of marriage every day. There was silence. They couldn't give me an answer. Tears streamed down their faces as we hugged. I said, feeling the weight of the past lifting after we embraced. I've missed you both so much. I reminded them. School's tomorrow. Make sure your mom lets them know about the wake and the funeral. You'll need some time off. I watched them drive off, feeling a warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. I looked up at the sky and whispered, Mom, I didn't need you to leave to bring my girls back, but thanks, I'll miss you. Wakes have always been tough for me. There's something about being near a body that never sat right with me. My mum's wake was even harder as I approached the casket and saw her peaceful face. I found some solace in that, and knowing she'd be with my father now, she'd planned everything meticulously, even down to the choice of casket. It was a relief knowing she had everything arranged as I chatted with one of her old friends. Lily and my daughters arrived. The girls gave me tearful hugs while after the prayer, Lily stood respectfully to the side, keeping her distance. I noticed that she'd placed something in the casket before sitting in the back of the room. I walked over and saw that it was a photo of me, Lily, and my mom, all holding our babies and smiling like we didn't have a care in the world. I picked up the photo and held it close to my mom's hands, tears welling up as I did during the service. Despite everything, Lily stayed in the back, chatting with a few family members quietly. She was still important to them. The usual rule was for immediate family to sit in the front, but it didn't seem right to see her sitting alone at the back with tears in her eyes. I knew my mom wouldn't have wanted it that way, so I went over and invited her to join us. "Come here, Lily," I said. "There's no need to hide." She hugged me and whispered a quiet thank you before joining us in the front. My uncle offered her a seat, and even Alice gave her a small nod of approval, holding her hand while my ex-wife sat nearby. My wife was sitting nearby, which was a bit surreal, but I was hoping it wouldn't cause any problems as the last visitors left. Lily thanked me for letting her be part of the family again and offered to share the limo ride, but Alice's hand on my waist reassured me there wouldn't be any tension as Lily departed. Alice wrapped her arms around me. I was in the kitchen, drinking a cold beer, when Alice came over to me. She said that everything went well with Lily. I agreed, and she told me that she was glad I didn't cause any trouble. I had half expected her to, though. Alice smiled and said that the girls probably helped with that. She added that everything would be fine after tomorrow. "I hope so," I replied. I couldn't shake the feeling that Lily and Alice might fall out again at some point. "Would you like to stay over tonight?" She gave my hand a little squeeze. "You couldn't get rid of me if you tried." We didn't have sex that night, but having her there was the best sleep I'd had since the divorce. Lily's voice broke through. As we waited for the service to begin, I thought about how I needed to be careful not to misuse her kindness by starting a fight. I knew I'd lied, but deep down I still felt uneasy. "How do you think I feel?" she replied with a sad smile. "I'm the outcast here, a disgrace." "No one sees you that way, Lily." I reassured her, though I knew it wasn't entirely true. "I'm sorry, Derek. I wish I could undo it all," she whispered, tears in her eyes, before rushing off to the bathroom. Ava, one of my mom's old friends, patted my shoulder gently. "Your mom was wonderful," she said. "We're all going to miss her." At the funeral, we met up at a small Norwegian restaurant that my mom loved. I noticed Lily looking a bit uncomfortable and unsure of where to sit. I took her hand and led her to the table where Alice and the girls were seated. I said, "Lily, you'll always be family, despite the divorce. You're welcome to sit with us." A single tear rolled down her cheek. As she thanked me, I realized I'd finally let go of the bitterness I'd held on to for so long. After that, the girls started Skyping with me weekly. Once they were away at college, Alice and I were growing stronger, and I was even thinking about proposing soon. Lily and I didn't chat much, but when we did it was always friendly. She was seeing someone, a nice guy, a single dad her age. I wished them the best. Some people might say I should have forgiven her for her mistake, but I couldn't. Maybe that made me the bad guy in some people's eyes, but I was at peace with it. I was at peace with myself.